All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Interesting hour talking about, of course, gun control. This 15-year-old that wanted to shoot up kids in his school, threat, and then the mother, pretty much making excuses for her child. We'll continue this conversation, but joining us on the line right now, you might have heard of this guy. He's been all over the news the last several days in regards to Nike, and Sports Illustrated did a story on him. Yahoo Sports just did a story on him. Rocking college basketball. He's certainly not here to talk about that because it's ongoing litigation, but we always love to have him on, and there's so many topics to get to. Michael Avenatti right now joining us live on the line. Michael, I know it's been a busy week for you. How are you doing? How are you holding up?
I'm doing all right, gentlemen. Look, from the onset, I just want to be really clear about this because I understand that people are picking countries to be the king of. So I am the king. I am the king of Italy. All right, so I'm putting dibs on Italy. I know Israel was taken within the last 24 hours by Donald Trump. I'm the king of Italy, so everyone else is going to have to pick a different country. That's fair.
I do want to talk to you about that. So a local talk show host here, Wayne Allen Root, called Donald Trump the king of the Jews. I want to play you this statement, Michael, and you might have heard it, but for our listeners, this is President Trump on Jewish voters who vote for Democrats. This is what he said. Keep in mind, this is the President of the United States talking about Jewish voters.
Any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat, I think it shows either a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty.
Okay, Michael Avenatti, what do you make of that statement yesterday?
Well, this guy is becoming increasingly unhinged with each passing day. Moments ago, you guys were on the air, but moments ago, he described himself as, quote, the chosen one, close quote. So he's the king of Israel. He's telling Jewish voters that they would be foolish to vote for anyone else. He's, quote, the chosen one. This guy is completely unhinged.
What do you make of the Tlaib and Omar press conference earlier this week and the president's response to that? Do you have any criticism for the way Tlaib has handled this whole situation with Israel? And what do you make of Israel, banning them from the country? What are your thoughts on that? Because we haven't had a chance to talk to you about this.
Yeah, my position is this. Look, Israel is a sovereign nation. They can decide who enters their country or does not enter their country. And they have their own policies and their own rules, and we don't get a chance to control that. So if they decide that they don't want someone to enter that country, that's their prerogative. We're not in a position to be telling Israel who to let in or who not to let in. The issue that I have is that it appears that the Trump administration actually put their finger on the scale in connection with that situation and either instructed Israel or sought to influence Israel's decision as to whether they should be let in the country. I have a problem with that because obviously I don't think politics should enter into that decision as to whether someone should be let into a nation or not. But certainly not an ally of ours.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, everything what you just said. I don't have a problem with Israel doing what they did. I do have a problem with Donald Trump interjecting in it and possibly influencing it. I want to go to Tlaib here real quickly, though, because I have criticized her. She writes this letter to Israel saying she wants to visit her 90-year-old grandmother, and I believe Israel does the right thing and allows her to come in the country if she wants to visit her grandmother. And then within 24 hours, she says, nope, forget it, not going to do it. I thought that was inappropriate on her part, kind of testing Israel. And as someone in Congress, I don't think they should be acting in that way. Do you agree with that?
No, I do agree with that. Look, I'm not a fan. I think I've been clear about this. I'm not a fan. All because I'm left of center doesn't mean that I have to be a fan of everyone on the left. I've been very critical of a number of people on the left, including Tlaib, and I don't think that was handled appropriately.
Yeah, I think we all certainly could agree on that. And Pat, look, as a Republican, and I agree with everything Avenatti has said.
I can't argue with anything he said so far.
So you agree so far?
But I will ask him a question.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Avenatti, what's your thoughts so far of the individuals running for the White House on the left-hand side going so far left? So you're left of center. So you're really more patriotic. You believe in the American way, the capitalist way. They're talking about going and changing our country and our dynamics 100%.
Well, I think a number of these candidates are too far left and are outside the mainstream. They may play well in California and in New York and other pockets of America, but from a political strategy perspective and from a policy and agenda perspective, as far as what I think the majority of Americans are looking for. I think they're far too left. I mean, I think some of these progressive ideals are just that. They're ideals. But I think the party has made a mistake in not pursuing or not having enough candidates that are pursuing a left of center agenda. Frankly, I think that what the Democratic Party needs right now is they need a Bill Clinton Democrat to run against Donald Trump. Now, obviously, they don't need someone that perhaps engaged in some of the conduct that Clinton did while in office. That's not what I'm referring to.
No, I know what you mean. You're talking about diplomatic.
Right.
I'm referring to someone that has, those policy positions. I mean, if you go back and you look, Bill Clinton was able to win in 1992 because he was left of center. He was not incredibly progressive. And I think especially right now when you're talking about running against a sitting president, in the history of the United States, when there's been a decent economy and an incumbent president has sought re-election, that individual has won every time in the history of the United States. And so if you're going to break that, standard or break that record, if you will, you're going to have somebody, in my view, that is an incremental change. You're not going to have someone that's going to be able to swoop in that is incredibly to the left. Now, if the economy softens, all bets are off. I think anybody in the race, frankly, I think Trump's approval ratings will go into the low 20s if the economy softens, and he'll be dead in the water.
You mentioned Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was probably the best bipartisan president. People on the right just related to what he had to say, which is why he won that election. Do you think that one thing Donald Trump, and you have to admit this, Donald Trump is very good at isolating his opponents. Do you think he's doing a good job, or he's attempting to isolate Tlaib and Omar and AOC and making them the face of the Democratic Party?
Well, he's doing his best to do that because they figured out that is a fruitful exercise in 2020. Now, the question is whether the Democrats are going to play along with that and allow him to do that. There's no question he wants to make them the face of the party. There's no question about that. I want to go back to Bill Clinton for a minute. I agree with you. I think he was a unifier. I think he was an exceptional president. There's a guy that I thought was going to potentially run, and when I was thinking about running, I saw him as a potential worthy adversary. Not a lot of people know a lot about him, but it's a guy by the name of Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans, who's very much like Clinton in many ways, is a unifier, has really been outspoken and on the forefront of race relations and unifying people, obviously from the South. I thought he was going to put his hat in the ring, and I think that he would have been a worthy opponent, and it would have been very interesting had he gotten in the race.
But what's your point now? I mean, when you look at what Tlaib and company have done, I mean, right now you'd have to say President Trump is looking like a prohibitive favorite to be reelected just because.
Well, I would say that he's a prohibitive favorite just because of the economy and the fact that it's very difficult to unseat an incumbent president. Now, we've never had someone like Donald Trump in office. So, all bets may be off. But I've been very consistent. I mean, I'm a supporter of Joe Biden. I'm not a supporter of Joe Biden because I think he's perfect. But we shouldn't allow the good or perfect to be the enemy of the good, I should say. Right. And I just don't think that a number of these candidates are going to play well in the key 5 states that this is going to come down to. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Florida.
I agree.
They're just not. They're just not.
If he's going to win Minnesota, too, and possibly New Hampshire now.
That would not surprise me. If you're just joining us, he is hailed the King of Italy. Michael Avenatti joining us on the line right now. Of course, we're mocking the fact that there are some people that believe that Trump is the King of Jews, Michael, can you name, because we were talking about this in the studio, can you name one policy or something that Donald Trump has put in place to help Jewish people in the United States of America? Because I can't.
Well, he's been very a number of his policies and towards Israel on foreign relations and the like have been incredibly beneficial,
right,
to Israel, and that results in some significant support here in the United States. For him. There's a lot of people living here in the U.S. That are very focused on the relations with Israel, Israeli foreign policy and the like. And I don't think anyone can argue that he has not been a friend of Israel, and the administration has adopted a lot of policies, and they've rolled back various policies of the Obama administration towards a pro-Israel stance. And I think, look, let's be really frank about what's driving this. Okay, here's what's driving the president's rhetoric right now on Israel and the Jewish vote. His internal polling and the way they've started to look at the 2020 race has indicated to him that a couple things have to happen for him to win re-election. One of the things that has to happen is they've got to use race and us against them and this divisive rhetoric to drive white vote to the polls, scare the hell out of white people so they vote for Donald Trump in 2020. That's one thing that their strategy is based on. And the second thing that Trump has been told is likely that he's going to have considerable support from people of Jewish people here in the United States in order to win re-election. And so that's why he's out there now with this rhetoric about the Jewish vote in Israel. He's not just waking up one day and just throwing this stuff out there. I mean, he's prone to do that from time to time, but that's what's driving this. They have indicated to him that they've got to have that vote, and they're right about that.
So there's roughly, 15 to 30 million Jewish people in the United States? The numbers aren't aggressive. Why then is the Jewish vote so important to him if the numbers really won't tip the scale?
Donors.
Well, yeah, I mean, one is donors, but also the turnout percentage. I mean, if you look at the percentage of registered voters, and I don't have it at my fingertips, but I think that probably a higher proportion of Jewish individuals in the U.S. register and vote. They're very politically active. They've been so for many, many decades, and for good reason. And they turn out in significant numbers at the polls. So that's number one. And then number two, every vote's going to count for him in 2020. And they've taken a look at what happened in 2016 and the votes that he was able to gather in 2016. And they've said, okay, well, how can we, if he loses suburban women, for instance, and suburban women all of a sudden have turned solidly against him, there's some indication that they have, where is he going to be able to make some inroads? And they've identified one of those areas as perhaps individuals of Jewish descent who will turn out and vote for him based on his policies on Israel.
What about his minority strength? He's starting to pick up numbers in the black and Hispanic voters as well.
Yeah, I don't believe that. Now, I may be wrong about it. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that I've seen some polling data on that. I'm finding that very, very hard to believe. Yeah. But, look at what the polls showed in 2016 and what transpired. Mm-hmm. I don't think that polling Donald Trump is as solid as perhaps polling other politicians, because I think that he has a lot of closet support.
I tend to agree with you on that one, Michael. So this is a subject that will probably ooze into the second segment because I'm sure you have a lot to say when it comes to this stuff. But, after the October 1 shooting in Las Vegas, Donald Trump was really tough. We're going to change these gun laws and comprehensive background checks. And then all of a sudden it went away. He spoke with the chief executive of the NRA, and all of a sudden all we got done after the October 1 shooting was bump stocks are gone, right? So the same thing happened with these mass shootings a few weeks ago, okay? He talked tough on gun control. In fact, listen to this. It was Ivanka Trump, reportedly, that tried convincing Trump on background checks by visualizing it as a historic Rose Garden ceremony. Well, I guess the NRA has changed his thoughts because he meets with the chief executive, and now all of a sudden, the last few days, all he's talking about is mental illness. He says all these gun laws are strong, and he's backtracking and flip-flopping. I mean, Michael, what do you make of all this?
Well, it's standard protocol for him, and you're going to continue to see this. He rides out the media storm, 24, 48, 72 hours, sometimes 96 hours at a maximum, and then people's attention is diverted to other things. And this phenomenon is even more acute now than it's ever been because of the way that people get their information and social media. We're always constantly checking our phones, looking for the next tweet, the next news story, the next text message. So attention spans are lower today than they've been probably at any point in time in our nation's history. And that works to his advantage when there's negative news. And when you have mass shootings, he's able to, give a sound bite And 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days later, people have forgotten about it, and they've moved on until the next mass shooting. We're not going to have any significant change in Washington on gun policy until we replace the president.
Trump has added by saying in the last several days that we already have very meaningful background checks, pretty much the opposite of what he said a week and a half ago. And then, you have people on the right that are agreeing with the president. Not many on the right are disagreeing with him. All they want to talk about now is mental illness. And sadly, Michael, I agree with you. I think until the next mass shooting and the next big news cycle, sadly, when we have more innocent Americans that lose their lives, it'll be brought up again. But I mean, do you truly believe that nothing is going to be done, that there will not be changes to our background checks, that these so-called weapons of war will still be on the streets? What do you make of all this? And because my opinion, Michael, is that when you have a school shooting where 7- and 8-year-old kids are shot to death and killed, and nothing is done then, and that was a different president. That was Obama was president back then, and nothing is done then, I have no doubt, sadly, that anything will change today, no matter how many mass shootings we have.
Well, nothing's going to change today with Donald Trump in the White House and McConnell running the Senate. Nothing's going to change until you elect a president who believes in gun control and is willing to put some political capital behind it. And let me say this, and I've been critical of him on other issues in the past, and I'm going to be critical of him now. Barack Obama did not do nearly enough as it related to gun control. He just didn't. And people say, well, what could he have done? The Democrats didn't control the Senate. Well, he could have done a lot. I mean, he could have used the bully pulpit to demand it. And I just don't think he went to the mat. He should have gone to the mat for some meaningful gun control in much the same way that Clinton did during his years in the White House. But, Barack Obama very often was too worried about, being seen as the angry black president.
Yeah.
And he didn't go to the mat on a number of issues, gun control and the Garland nomination being two of them that are foremost in my mind.
I'll tell you what I want to do. I'm going to squeeze in a quick phone call right now, and then I want to take more calls on the other side of the break. The GCI Guys hotline is 257-5396 if you want to be a part of this conversation. On with Michael Avenatti, who has been crowned the King of Italy, by the way. He's announced at the beginning of this hour. 257-5396 is the number to call. Why don't we go to Damien real quickly? Damien, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I was on the air. I wasn't on the air, but I was listening to you guys about 20 minutes ago, so I don't know where the conversation's kind of switched since then. But I was just kind of curious on what policies are you guys interested in actually implementing? I get that you guys want maybe more things implemented into the background checks, but
yes.
What exactly is it you guys are wanting?
That's a good question, Damien, and I appreciate that. Michael, I'll let you answer that. What do you want as far as policy-wise? What do you want to see change here?
Well, I think assault weapons need to be taken off the streets. There's no reason that civilians need to have AK-47s or AR-15s. They just don't. I also don't think that we should have high-capacity magazines, more than 10 or 12 shots. I mean, look, if you can't put somebody down with 10 or 12 shots, you probably shouldn't be shooting to begin with.
That's true.
I mean, honestly, if you can't put somebody down with the first few shots, you shouldn't have a gun in your hand. So I don't think we need high-capacity magazines. We shouldn't have magazines or drum barrels that can hold 100 rounds that operate really as killing machines. I think we need to have background checks. We need to close the gun show loophole where individuals can go to gun shows and carry off as many weapons as they want in some states. And I think that all firearms should have to be registered. And if you want to operate one, you should have a license. No different than you have to register your car and you have to have a license to operate your car. Mm-hmm. I think those policies, if we implemented that would go a long way. And people say, well, but that wouldn't stop all the mass shootings. Well, what if it stopped one a year?
Yeah. No, you're right.
I mean, is that not enough? I mean, if it was your brother or your mother or your sister or your kid whose life would be saved, would that be enough? I
agree. I'll tell you what I want to do, Michael. I want to continue this conversation on the other side of the break. We got to take a quick break. If you want to be a part of the conversation, 257-5396. Michael Avenatti joining us on the line. He's going to join us for another segment coming up. You're listening to The Vegas Take on 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is The Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, so glad you could join us. Also glad Michael Avenatti joining us for the hour. If you want to be a part of the conversation, ask Michael a question. Join the GCI Guys hotline, which is 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call is 257-5396. Michael, before we get to calls, I want to ask you about this. I know you've been friends with Anthony Scaramucci, or as I like to call him, the Mooch, for a very, very long time. And in the last few weeks, of course, he's been in the news because he's basically said, no, I will not support Donald Trump in 2020, and he's doubled down on that. He said he's trying to get a team together to not only get Donald Trump out of office, but to find a Republican that can replace him. What do you make of all this, Michael? You've known the Mooch for a long time. I know you guys are close.
I think the Mooch may primary Trump.
Really?
You know what? And for the people that are laughing out there, let me tell you, I've known Anthony for, a significant amount of time. He and I talk on a fairly regular basis. We've had a lot of discussions, and I'm just telling you, it would not surprise me if that actually happened. People can say a lot of things about the Mooch. This is not a stupid guy. I mean, he's a shrewd guy. He's a smart guy. He was a little too trusting with that reporter when he was the White House communications director. He's a guy from the neighborhood. He's a complicated guy. But I'm going to tell you something. He's not stupid. He's very smart. He's well read.
Sure.
He understands how the media works. The press loves this guy. When you see him interact behind the scenes with bookers from shows and anchors and the like, he is uniformly liked and appreciated. It would be a real problem for Donald Trump if Anthony Scaramucci primaried Trump. And it looks like at a minimum, he's going to be a real thorn in the president's side as this election plays out. So do not underestimate Anthony Scaramucci.
Quickly, Michael, before we get to phone calls, why did it take the Mooch this long to criticize Donald Trump in the way that he has publicly?
Well, because I guess he's just, not as quick as I am. Look. Here's what I will say. Okay, it's like a marriage and a divorce. Very often, you meet somebody, you fall in love with them, you live with them, you get married, and 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 years later, you wake up one day and you're looking in the mirror and you're saying to yourself, "What the hell was I thinking? How could I ever end up with this person?" Okay, so let those individuals who have never found themselves in that situation, whether it be a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife, let those individuals judge Anthony Scaramucci and what took him so long.
Right. For the record, that's what every woman does when they go out with me. They look in the mirror the next day. 257-5396.
I like the political love cycle analogy.
257-5396 is the number to call. Let's start off with Sharon. Sharon, you're on with Michael Avenatti. What's on your mind?
What's up, Sharon?
Hi, Mr. Avenatti. I have one question. Hi. If you woke up next November 4th and discovered that you had been elected president via write-in, what would be some of the first issues that you would like to tackle?
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I think I'm more likely to wake up next November 4th in a spaceship somewhere being abducted by aliens. But here's what I will say. I think that if a Democrat unseats Donald Trump, it is going to be imperative that that individual immediately seek to unify the country. If I was elected, I would spend the first 45 days after the election in all of the red states in the United States. I would go to the deepest red states in the U.S., and I would sit down and have town halls and talk to people and really make myself available and hear folks out, because I think it's going to be a very divisive campaign. I think it's going to further tear this country apart, and whoever is elected needs to immediately focus on unifying the country and putting people's fears at ease. Otherwise, we could potentially have a very big problem.
All right, let's take another phone call. GCI Guys hotline is 257-5396, area code 702. Let's go to Josh. Josh, what's going on?
What's up, Josh?
Hey, guys, I was wondering, on the gun debate, if you could define what you think an assault weapon is, because an assault weapon could be anything that shoots anywhere from 100 rounds to 1 round. And then I want to make sure I understand, you think that guns should be confiscated. So if I get attacked by someone with an AR-15 AR-15. Michael thinks I should protect myself with something with 10 shots. Is he kidding me?
All right, Michael, go ahead and respond to that.
Well, first of all, if you talk to law enforcement officers, individuals that are on the street, men and women that are risking their lives every day to keep you safe, they don't want AK-47s or AR-15s on the streets because it makes their job incredibly difficult. I think there has to be a mandatory buyback program on some of these assault weapons. Now, where do we draw the line on what the assault weapon is? I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is an AR-15 and an AK-47 would be over the line because those are killing machines. Nobody needs that amount of firepower to protect yourself here in the United States. You just don't. I mean, when's the last time that somebody needed that type of weapon on a home invasion type of scenario? When's the last time you heard of anyone breaking out their AR-15 or AK-47 to put down an intruder that came through their front door or a plate glass window?
All the time.
It never happens.
All the time.
Josh, go ahead.
All the time.
You're saying
Josh,
it happens all the time.
Josh, you're claiming that people routinely use AK-47s and AR-15s to protect their home from invasion?
AK-47s are illegal, but an AR-15 is still legal. If I'm attacked by an AR-15, I would like to have an AR-15 to defend myself. That's my point.
Well, what if you're attacked by a hand grenade? Should you have a hand grenade as well?
Those are illegal, Michael. Those are illegal.
No, but see, that's my point, though. Under what I'm saying is that AK-47s and AR-15s and similar assault weapons would be illegal. It would all be illegal.
What if I try to play chicken with you?
Grenades.
What if I try to play chicken with you with a armored Humvee?
Josh, go ahead and respond.
Now it's an absurd discussion. We're not even talking like adults.
Hey, Josh, describe the AR-15 so they can get a better understanding, because I know what an air-light gun is, and I know it's not a weapon for the war. It's a single-shot rifle. Please explain that to these people.
The AR-15 is just the one pull, one bullet, and basically it's just. My point is, I would like to be able to defend myself against an AR-15 with an equal AR-15.
In public?
Josh, I'm sure you're a great shot, but let me tell you something. If somebody is breaking into your home with an AR-15 and targeting you, it doesn't matter what you have. People that burglarize homes generally don't use AR-15s or other assault weapons when they come into somebody's home. So that's more like a professional hit or something of that nature, and it's going to take a hell of a lot more than you having an equal AR-15 to avoid a likely demise in that situation.
Josh, go ahead. I'll give you another chance to respond. Go ahead.
Well, what would you recommend I protect myself with in the case that I got attacked with an AR-15?
Well, again, I don't think it's likely that somebody with an AR-15 or another assault is going to be attacking you in your home. And if so, you're going to likely be in, unfortunately, a world of hurt regardless of what you have. But I think 45 caliber, 357, 9, 10 millimeter, these are all very effective self-defense weapons. And if you have 10 or 12 or 8 rounds, you should be able to adequately protect yourself.
I agree with that.
We're not talking about going to war.
Right. Number to call again if you want to be a part of the conversation. It's 702-257-5396. Our guest is Michael Avenatti. Let's go to Stas. Stas, you're next on the Vegas Take. What's on your mind?
Hey, Ben. First-time caller here. Pat, great to talk to you.
Hold on one second. Hold on, Stas. Just for the record, I'm not Ben Shapiro.
I like calling you Benjamin from now on.
That's great.
You're Benjamin moving forward.
I am not Ben Shapiro. I'm Brian Shapiro. I know Michael Avenatti is a huge fan of Ben Shapiro. I know, actually, to all seriousness, I want Michael and Ben to get into a debate. Stas, just for the record, my name is Brian Shapiro. No relation to Ben.
Apologies,
That's
Brian.
okay. That's okay.
All right, so I had to call in because the conversation here and across the country is just missing place. It's lost. You're talking about gun control. Pat asked a question about what's the difference between an AR-15 and maybe that little Glock that's sitting in your nightstand. Nothing. They both go click, 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 click. That's the pace. As far as the magazine, KPL saying that it should be no more than 10 in your magazine. A Glock comes with 15 standard, 16 if you have one in the chamber. It's insanity. You're talking about taking everybody's guns when you say things like that. You're causing a lot of great gun sales, I can tell you that. Now let's get to the root of the problem. Is there another gun law going to fix anything? I don't know. Let's test it out in Chicago. Did it work there? No. So how do you really solve it? Why don't we get to the beef? They did everything but call. Well, actually, they did call the FBI and tell them Cruz was about to shoot up the school, and the FBI didn't execute. That's your problem.
All right, Stas, stay on the line. Stas, stay on the line. Valid points. I want to let Michael respond to that. Go ahead, Michael.
So let me ask you a question. You think that individuals should be able to have magazines of unlimited numbers of rounds, 100 round, 200 round, whatever they need, and there should be absolutely no restriction on what people can buy in the form of assault weapons and ammunition. Am I right about that?
Okay, so you can close the barn doors after the cows left, but it's not going to do anything. There's hundreds of millions of those in America. So let's get to the root of the problem.
No, sir, I'm just trying to understand. I just would like you to answer my question. Do you think there should be any restriction?
Let me answer it directly. Why is there a Second Amendment? It's not to hunt deer. It's to fight back. It's to push back on government tyranny. Okay? At the time, they used muzzle loaders or muskets, if you want to call them that. But that was the best weapon the military had, and the public was allowed to have it as well. That's why those laws exist. Now, if you put a law on it, a law-abiding citizen like myself is going to abide by the law. Criminals are not, and they are going to have as big of a magazine as they want. So get off your damn law thing. Your laws, look, we've already got laws on the books for background checks. The problem is the background checks don't capture all the information that was available to begin with. It's execution. The kid in the high school said he had a rape list and a kill list, but that didn't appear on his background check. It's execution. They called and said Cruz was about to shoot up a school. The FBI did nothing. The sheriff's department was at his home 30 times. It's about
Sir, let me ask you this question. Sir, you didn't answer my first question, but maybe you'll answer this one, okay? I want you to assume.
Yes.
I want you to assume.
Should be able to have as many in their magazines as they want.
Okay. Go ahead, Michael.
Sir, I want you to assume that, God forbid, someone who has past felony convictions and has a severe mental problem walks into a gun show and purchases a gun that he otherwise would not be able to get if he went into a gun store.
Okay,
I then want you to assume, wait, no, my question's not done. I then want you to assume
Let him finish, Des.
that he unfortunately takes the life of your mother, brother, your child, or your spouse, or maybe all of them. You mean to tell me that you would then be trumpeting that there should be no gun control and that gun sale should have been allowed? I'm going to call bullshit on that.
Yeah,
you would be the first guy. You would be the first person.
Why don't you tell me where I can go to a gun show and buy a gun without a background check? Your whole story is bullshit. Go to a gun show.
All right, guys.
Find out they're heavily regulated.
We can't.
You cannot buy a
watch
gun
the language
without a background check at a gun show. You're full of shit.
Say, watch the language. You got to watch the language, Stas.
Stas,
no cussing, Stas. That was good.
Great call, but we have FCC regulations we have to abide by.
Yeah.
Stas, let me tell you this, and this is kind of a harrowing stat, but since 1998, there have been 230 million background checks, and only 1.6 million have been turned down. That is terrifying.
Michael, go ahead and respond. Go ahead.
All right. The caller talks about the Second Amendment and how it was permitted for individuals when the Second Amendment was passed to have the same level of firepower as the military at that point in time. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but let's assume that it was. That was an entirely different time in our nation's history. Our military now has rocket-propelled grenade launchers. Are we going to allow people to have their own personal rocket-propelled grenade launcher?
Right.
It's all a question about reasonableness.
Can we have stealth aircraft?
Well, correct. I mean, there's got to be a line. Can people carry around hand grenades in their pockets? No, of course not.
But the delivery system and the execution of finding out when somebody applies for a weapon, you can't. I will tell you, if I go into a gun show, I can't just walk in and get a gun any longer. There are great rules and regulations out there. The bottom line is, if you get calls and you go and you investigate somebody more than 5 times, there's a problem. That person ends up going out and shooting somebody. We have issues. I think what he's saying is the system needs to work on itself and make sure that they do what they're supposed to do and not let this happen.
No one is advocating. I don't disagree with that. This is not an either or scenario. A lot of people that argue against gun control argue, well, why isn't the FBI doing more, or why aren't we taking care of the mentally impaired more? Look, I'm all for that. I agree, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have reasonable gun control measures on the books that are enforced. It's not an either or scenario. And
I agree with the reasonable.
But the problem that I have is a lot of people that are advocating against gun control are the same individuals that are dropping funding and cutting funding for those who are mentally impaired and who need treatment. I have a problem with that.
Let's take another call on this issue at 257-5396. Let's go to Chuck. Chuck, you're on with Michael Avenatti. Go.
What's up, Chuck?
Hey, I agree with that last caller. I'm not a gun hunter or hunter, but I'm a Second Amendment. The tyranny is back in April 1975, what happened? They went to go confiscate the guns. That's what started the whole shebang.
All right. Michael, you want to respond to that?
Well, again, on the individuals, I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment as well, but we've got to have reasonable rules and regulations and laws implementing the Second Amendment. The question is, where do we draw the line? And, the caller, not this caller, but the caller before, of course, he refused to answer the question. And the reason he refused to answer the question is because he knows that it would be very difficult for him to substantiate no limit whatsoever, which evidently is what he thinks. He believes that individuals should be able to own almost any type of gun that they want with any magazine capacity necessary in their sole and absolute discretion. I don't think the majority of Americans support that idea.
And for the record, when you ask Michael Avenatti a question, he answers it. He doesn't dodge that. If you're trying to make a point and somebody asks you a question, answer it. That caller did not answer your question, period. Let's go to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, what's going on? You're on with Michael Avenatti.
Hey, gentlemen. How are y'all today?
Good. What's on your mind?
Good.
Great. Michael, the other day you posted News for Jacks, the picture of the alligator climbing the fence at the Naval Air Station.
That was hilarious.
Well, did you know that less than a month ago, Mike Pence and Ivanka Trump landed at NAS, and they met here in Jacksonville, that's where I'm from, with Governor DeSantis. But I think that the alligator was a little late, wasn't he?
Thank you for the call, Elizabeth. We appreciate
I have one more question.
All right, quickly.
Michael, I saw in the Hardy, or heard in the Hardy report where you indicated that you had the occasion to listen to your to read your essay again from high school. Would there be any way you would ever be able to post that for all of us to be able to read?
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, that's an interesting question. I'll consider doing that. This is an essay that I wrote 30 years ago when I was in high school, junior or senior, talking about how the NRA's campaign against gun control is deceptive. And what's most disturbing about that, of course, is here we are 30 years later, and we're talking about the same issues, and we need to do whatever it takes to make sure that another 30 years does not pass and there's not meaningful gun control. And I want to be really clear about this, okay? No, I am not advocating that we're going to go out and we're going to take everybody's guns away from them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about reasonable gun control measures so that we can hopefully prevent all, likely not all, but at least some mass shootings in the United States. And again, even if these measures prevent one, that saves a lot of heartache for a lot of mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters. I mean, isn't that enough?
All right, Michael, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. Is purchasing Greenland a good idea, considering the potential military placement to Russia and the considerable amount of resources they have in their country?
Well, look, I haven't done a full analysis of whether it would make sense or not. I think from a strategic location, just at first blush, it might be something interesting to do, but I think that ship has sailed. I mean, I don't know the last time. I don't think countries are routinely sold and purchased. And, the suggestion in and of itself is absurd. I mean, with all of the problems we have going on here in the United States and overseas, Trump is focused on this idea of purchasing Greenland. I mean, it's a fool's errand.
Yeah. Well, Michael, always appreciate it when you take some time to join us. Look forward to the next time. Hopefully you could join us in studio next week, but I know you got a lot going on right now for your supporters out there, or really for anybody. What can you tell us about what is the latest with Michael Avenatti? What do you got going on here before we let you go?
Well, we have a status conference tomorrow in the Nike case in New York, and I'm restricted in what I can say. And I stand behind the motions that we filed 100%. Everything within them is true. It's all accurate. It's all backed up by evidence, and I'm anxious for the truth and the facts to come out in that case, and let the chips fall where they may, regardless on where they may fall or who they may fall on.
Gotcha. Michael, always appreciate it when you take some time to join us, and we look forward to joining you again next week. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
There you go. It is the King of Italy, Michael Avenatti. We appreciate that. And also, I want to say, Pat, thank you so much again for stopping by. We want to do this every week with you. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you too. It's just a blast. I have a good time.
Always appreciate it. Your
great
views.
calls.
You do great at what you do, and we always love having you in. Thanks for the calls, everybody. Coming up next, we are going to do the news with John Schaefer, the golf guru Dennis Silvers, and not forgetting that UNLV football head coach Tony Sanchez will be joining us in hour number 3 as well. Take a quick break. Be back right after this. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take Sharp and Shapiro. When we come back, we're going to get a preview of the Tour Championship with the golf guru Dennis Silvers. Also at the bottom of the hour, UNLV head football coach Tony Sanchez will be joining us. And coming up here in just a minute, we are going to get the news from KDWN news anchor John Schaefer. What is the latest? Oh, yeah, there's a lot going on in the world. We will get to John Schaefer coming up here in just a few minutes. You are listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDWN, 20 AM, KDWN.